the story that I've been hesitant to tell and show, and this has really come up a lot for me, you know, since we started talking, is there's a side of me that is a healer, and one way to look at it is yes, that there's some training and there's patient or client relationship, and then there's healing going on. But on the other side of it is when I retired from football, one of the things that kind of allowed me to retire is I was looking at my life and I said, am I a football player? And the awareness I got was no. And so then I was like, well, then what am I? And what I got was, when I'm around people, because I look at things a different way, that they always leave the interaction with more awareness, more possibilities, more choices available to them, because, and I get this a lot, I never looked at it that way. I never thought about it that way. And so for me as a healer, it's just that everyone I touch, they have more of themselves available to them. And the way our bodies are is when our bodies experience trauma past a certain threshold, when the tissue heals, it's scar tissue. It's not as flexible, it's not as durable. It doesn't allow for a full expression in our bodies. And so
sounds like it's protective.
It's protective, yeah. And so you know, when you look at the long term and you see a lot of issues with football players nowadays, and you know, dementia, and you know, suicide and CTE, you know, losing control of their body, to me it starts to make sense, because when your body is so beat up and you haven't done anything to change it, it's, you know, it really affects the way you can express your being. And it really is like literally like your light can't shine. And it's almost like if you look at your body as the lantern, you know, and your being or your spirit is the light. If your body can't fully express itself, then it really dims what you can be. And to me, that's what I see healing as. You know, I see when your light shines, that's health. And when your body doesn't allow your light to shine, to me, that's dis-ease or a lack of health. In 2006, when I went to play in Canada, I ended up breaking my arm. And I had an accident a week and a half later where a door came and hit the back of my Achilles and almost tore my Achilles. And so I was out for 2 months, and we had a trainer there on our team whose professor in college was an osteopath. And so she said, you know, this guy I know, Gus, you know, he knows about sports medicine and he does this other stuff. Why don't you go see him since you have all this free time? And so I went to see Gus, and we just started having a conversation about bodies. And I've always been interested in my body just because I'm a curious guy. And osteopaths they get an extreme education in biology and physiology and anatomy. So they really, really have an amazing grasp of the body. And so to be able to have the conversations that we could have, it really just opened my mind. And then working with him, he started to show me that, yeah, he talked about how we stack layers and layers of trauma on the body. And part of the work he was doing was kind of unwinding those layers so that you can get back to a more natural expression of yourself. And that's for everyone. But if you take it in the context of football, you see, wow. And so working with him for 3 months, my body just became so much freer, and I became a better football player. And it was kind of strange to me because I didn't make the connection that I had beaten up my body and it was affecting the way that I was playing. And so I started to become a better football player. And then a couple of years later, the same kind of work, craniosacral work, I went through a week-long intensive where you were getting this work done 4 or 5 hours a day for a week. And really, I could feel like the layers of trauma, like unlocking and reversing.
So is this one of the main reasons that we think that this film might be a great idea to educate people? Or?
I do think so. And I think one of the things is football, especially in America, it's the #1 sport. And people love the game of football. But on the other side of it, as a player, I don't think there's anything that people do to themselves that is as harsh and violent and destructive as playing football. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but I think, you know, it opens the door for us to look at ways that we can start taking better care of ourselves. Because you think about it, if the change I've created with my body after all the abuse I took in football, then you see someone who maybe just has stress only the stress component, because football, understand, it's physical stress, it's emotional stress, and it's mental stress. It's intense, so intense. So if that's a model and you can show change or healing there, imagine what that means for the rest of the world. And another part of this is what I've realized is a lot of the way we limit what we can be in life is because we're not willing to deal with the intensity that it takes to have all the things we'd really like to have. And when I talk about intensity, I'm talking about physical intensity, which would be football, or a physical intensity if you have a job where you have to travel a lot. Is your body healthy enough? Like for me, I can fly to Australia for 2 days, come back, and be fine. Like what I can do with my body now, it doesn't make logical sense, but I can. And I ended up, was in India with my yoga teacher, and I came across a book that said The Modern Art of Pranic Healing. And I knew that prana meant energy from my yogic study. And so there was something like that I was asking for about the energetic components of life that I'd never knew really acknowledge even it really existed. Although I'd been using it my whole life, but I didn't have a vernacular, I didn't have a language to understand it, to talk about it, and to utilize it. And so I ended up, come back to the States, and I look up this pranic healing thing, and I see that there's a class next weekend, 2 hours away. So I enroll in that class, and I go to that class, and I learn about energy healing. And it's really, when I was studying yoga, we talked about these weird metaphysical new age things like chakras. Well, in this pranic healing, it was really the science of the energy field and the chakras. And for me, it wasn't like this woo-woo off-the-wall stuff, although it was, but there is like a scientific basis behind it that really appealed to the analytical part of me. And then if you add all these other things, the yoga and the mind, and then you add the energy and the chakras, it's just, I was really getting an education and a language with which to communicate and change things going on with my body. And this whole time, especially when I went back to football, I was using this on myself to help my body prepare and heal and recover and perform. So, true story. So I find out that I failed this drug test, and that basically my life is over, because I was suspended a year, and then when they were going to let me back, I messed up again, and so I was going to be booted out forever. So I'm sitting on the couch, sitting there depressed, and then I remember, wow, I just took this healing class, and they said that, we could heal people from a distance. And so what I did is all the people that made the decisions in the NFL, Roger Goodell, the commissioner, the 2 doctors that were head of the drug program, I just started doing healing on them. And so every time I would get depressed, I would get up and I would do healing on them. And what it did is it really turned me from being the victim to empowering me to see what I can do here that might change something. And so I get a phone call from the NFL, and they say, you were supposed to go to New York and meet these doctors to go for your reentry kind of exam. And so he said, but since you failed this drug test, we're just, I'm sure you don't want to go now. And for me, again, I was being proactive about what I can change here. And I said, actually, I do want to go, because I do have some questions, and maybe they can, give me some answers. Because I literally pissed everything away, threw it all. And it all came back. I didn't chase it. It literally all came back to me. I was called and asked to come back and play football.
Even after all that?
Even after all that.
So do you want to create a new legacy or image as a healer now, or do you not even care about labels anymore?
Well, I do, but still, there's so many misconceptions. I would like to change what healing is, the way people look at healing. I'd like to change that definition, because then it allows me to be okay with being called a healer. And it's an example of how athletes can, in my opinion, should, instead of making football the answer or making their sport the answer, because you can't play forever, to see how can your football career create the life you want to have. And for me, that's what I've been able to do. I started spending my off seasons taking care of my body and learning a skill that I enjoyed doing, and now it's really transitioned. And what I started talking about was this coming up is really kind of reminded me that that's a really big part of myself, is doing that work and working with bodies. Just because I know I have so much information about bodies that it's almost cruel to the world to keep it to myself.
So our sort of idea is that we want to go back and talk to all these people that have helped mold who you are today. And then do you have a vision of how you'd want to move forward from this point in time?
Well, so for me, what I found is when I was a football player, I'd look at like, and I didn't really look at it except in passing. Then I would see like yoga, or I would see energy healing, and I would see all these things. I was like, that stuff is crap. But when I actually ended up with it in my face, and I got a sense of what, and again, these great mentors could explain to me what it was. So it wasn't like something I had to believe in. It was something that I could perceive myself. And so, like I hear about these psychic surgeons, and and I hear about like this guy in Brazil, John of God, and there's certain things that I still have curiosity about. And I know, if I find a person that really is getting results, that they'll be able to show me what they see. And when they show me what they see, then I start to have access to it. And so there's people that are doing things in the world that I'm just like, whoa. And that's what interests me, is because once I see them doing, I know it's a possibility. And like I said, when what you know is possible meets with what actually shows up, that's when it's like, whoa.